Hello everybody, welcome back to my workshop and welcome back to my garage. Today what we're going to be doing in this next video is going to be covering finishing off the neck. So what I'm going to be covering in this one, I'm going to go ahead and level the back of it here where it was cut off on the bandsaw, and then we're going to go ahead and get it faceted and get the back of the neck carved. We're also going to work on getting the headstock veneer put on, as well as getting the fret markers and frets installed on this neck and getting this neck finalized. So that's what's going to be covered in this video. So please sit back, relax, and let's roll. Okay, what I'm doing here is I'm just drawing a center line down the neck, the back of the neck, and getting the neck set up for the facets. So from that center line, then I'm going to measure from the center line to the edge of the neck, and I'm going to mark that and then connect that on each side. And then on the side of the neck, what I'll do is from where the fretboard meets the neck to the bottom of the edge of the neck there, I'm going to draw another line. You can see the line already drawn on the side of the neck. And then what I'll do is you take and you connect those facets and you file off the edge. Basically, I'm going from the first two lines that I drew, and I'm just going to file that down until the lines are gone, or I'm right to the line. At which point then I'll draw another set of facets from where the fretboard and the neck meet to the middle of that facet that I'm cutting there, and also from the center line of the neck again to the center of that facet that I'm cutting. And then I'll cut those facets, and by the time you're done with this, you've pretty much got a rounded over neck. Okay, so I've got the first set of facets cut in on each side of the neck. Basically, this is the method that I learned from watching Ben Crow's videos at Crimson Guitars. Basically, you half the neck, half it, and cut facets in it. So what I've got is this first set of facets here. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a line halfway between this first facet and between the fretboard and the edge there. And then I'll round that off. And then that'll pretty much round that off area of the neck over, and then I'll do the same on the other side, and then I'll cut from the center of the facet to the center between the center line and here, and just start to round that off. Then once I get it all faceted down, it'll pretty much be rounded at that point and ready for smooth sanding, and then ready for final profiling, where I'll use my profile gauges to make sure I've got the right radius and what I'm looking for on the neck. And here I'm just cutting the second set of facets in. I'm using this rasp. It's really quick, removes a lot of material. There's a coarse side and a smooth side, so you can adjust it. But this process takes a little while. It took me about 3 hours, I think, to get all the facets cut in and get it set to where I wanted it to. Alright, so what we've got so far is I've got all the facets done, and I've just taken some 80 grit. Right now I'm taking some 80 grit and just kind of getting a rough shape of it. I still need to file it down and make sure I'm right where I want to be for my 1st and 12th fret, but that's no problem. I can do the additional shaping then when that time comes, just playing it down a little bit. Right now it's about a 58 or 59 LP profile, which is what I'll go for on one of the necks, but I don't know what my friend wants on the other one, so I'm just waiting for his reply back to see what we want to go with there. Here I'm just using some 80 grit, smoothing everything out and kind of getting the profile initially set. So what we have so far is I do have the neck. The initial carve is done. But what we need to do is just take it down a little bit thinner. The person this neck is going to, or this guitar is going to, wanted more of a 60s profile, and right now I have more of a 58, 59 profile on it. So I'm just going to be taking that profile down a little bit. I will also be finalizing the volute, getting the volute taken in, and doing the preliminary stuff on the neck heel. The neck heel will be final adjusted once it's in the guitar, and we start to do the contours and everything on the body to accommodate from that. We'll also be going through putting the fret markers on, so let's get rolling. So for carving the neck, I've just got it clamped down to my workbench. That way it's a nice stable surface. Got some cork in between the fretboard and the clamping caul that I'm using. Basically, I'm just going to be using the Stumac 60 LP neck profile gauges and some Japanese rasps and files to go and finish the contour on this neck. I might also use a spoke shave for some of it, but basically what I'm going to do is I want 0.08 or 0.80 at the first fret and 0.90 at the 12th fret. Right now I'm at about 0.90 at the first and 1.0 at the 12th, so I need to go down about 1/10 of an inch all the way around and then kind of smooth the profile sides a little bit. So really it's going to be just straightforward. I do have my files, and I'm just going to take at the first fret and gently contour and get the top down to where I need it to be. And then what I'll do is I'll do that at the 12th fret as well, and then that way I can connect the two. So I've got my initial measurements, so what I'm doing is just doing an initial carve on this. I'm going to file it down just a little bit. And then using my neck profile gauge for the first fret, I'm going to put that on there. Still need to come down a little bit on the sides. And then I'll be using a caliper as well to check my distance to make sure I'm where I need to be, because I don't want to go too much. And this is just a slow process. Now what I'm doing is I'm just adjusting this down to the profile that the neck's actually going to be in. Initially, when I did the initial carve on this, it put it to about a 59 Les Paul feel to it. Now that I have the profile set at the first fret and at the 12th fret, I'm just going to use a combination of spoke shaves, files, rasps to get the profile connected and smooth in the straight line between those 2 points. Here I'm just hand drawing in the volute curves, the tentative curves that I want. As I go to profile down at that area of the neck, I want to start working on the volute at that time and rounding that over as well. And again, I'll just be using a combination of rasps and files to carve that volute in roughly, and then once I get closer to the final shape, use sandpaper to do the final adjustments. For the fret markers, I drew a center line down the center of the neck, and then at the frets that I want the markers on, I find the center between the fret slots, just double checking with a micrometer to make sure I'm the same distance across. You also notice I got some X's across. I drew those from the edge of the fret slot to the edge of the fret slot, just to double check to make sure that the center all meets up at the right spot, the center of the cross versus the center line. And then as I mark each position, I'll mark it with an owl, just so I make sure the drill bit doesn't wander when I go to drill the holes. Here I'm just using a 1/4" Forstner bit to drill the holes. I'm only going down about 1.5 millimeters for each spot. The fret markers that I have are 2 mil thick. That way they'll protrude up a little bit and I'll have enough to sand off and smooth it out, but not deep enough to where I'll sand through, or shallow enough to where I'll sand through the fret marker. And that Forstner bit has a brad point on it to where it lines up with the mark that I put on it earlier, so I can make sure that I've got everything centered. Here what I'm doing is just a little bit of super glue in the hole. I put the fret dot in, and then I've got some sawdust from where I did some sanding on the fretboard, and I'm using that sawdust around the fret marker just to fill in any gaps that might be there. And then I just take a file and file all that down after it dries. Here I'm cutting out the headstock veneer. This is a 1/16" flame maple veneer that's going to go on the headstock. And here I'm just applying the glue and gluing the veneer onto the headstock. You notice I've already got the center line drawn on the veneer so I can line it up with the center line on the headstock, as well as I've got the location for my truss rod access point drawn on there, which will make it easier to cut out once everything dries and I go to do the final on that. I leave a gap there for the nut. It's a little bit smaller than what the nut is, but that gives me room to file and make sure the nut's a perfect fit later on. And then a good amount of clamps to clamp that down and let it dry. Here I am getting ready to put the peg head template on so I can start drilling the tuner holes. Just some super glue and masking tape to hold that on there. I've already got 1/8" holes drilled in the template, so it's lined up with the center line, glued on here, and then I transfer those holes through and I drill a 1/8" pilot hole through the headstock. Now what I've got is a 10 millimeter brad point bit, and I drill about halfway down through, following the 1/8" pilot hole that I'd already drilled. I've got the support just so it stays straight. And then I flip it over and I drill the rest of the way through from the back side. This meets up the holes and it prevents any tear out. Alright, well I think I'm going to cut this video a little bit shorter than what I initially intended. Initially I wanted to get the neck fretted during this video, but it's getting long enough as it is. So I'll end it right now with this one. So what I've got so far on the neck, I've got the neck profiled down to basically about a 59 or 60s era Les Paul neck is the contour I used. I've got the fretboard installed, radiused, fret slots cut, inlays in. I used abalone dot inlays on that. I really like the way that looks on the maple. It's a nice subtle look. And then I use black side markers I've got the veneer on the headstock and the tuner pegs drilled. I still need to clean up the area where the truss rod access is. I haven't cut that out yet on the veneer, but I'll be doing that. And then I'll clean up the nut slot. So I'm going to end the video here with that. So please, just like to remind everybody, if you like what I'm doing, click like, click subscribe, help the channel out. I'm trying to grow it as much as possible. And until the next time, thank you and take care.